hopefully this time everything will work as planned. Actually, I mean, clear this, it's not important to see it. There we go. There was some experience that didn't work. Anyway, so okay everyone, in last week's video we did some things, and in this week's video we're going to cover what object-oriented programming in Java is. As you remember from our last sessions with different languages, object-oriented programming is pretty much the last section of our tutorials. This I'll, however, split into two different, videos. We're going to cover it up to, I think, methods? No, up to modifiers. We're going to cover everything up to modifiers, and in the next week's video we're going to cover what encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction is. Just a heads up so you guys know what to look for with dots. So yeah. So let me first explain what object-oriented programming is. It's procedural programming that is about writing procedures and methods that can perform various operations. And the thing why people use it mostly is, one, it makes everything faster and easier to execute. It also provides a clear structure so that, for the program, so that if anyone else wants to read the code afterwards, it will pretty much work out of the box. They can have a look at the code, and it's easier to understand and just get the hang of it. So another thing is, it also helps to keep the Java code DRI, which means you pretty much don't repeat yourself, which is the worst thing you can possibly do in programming. I almost always say the last thing you want to do is repeat yourself. That's the worst thing you can possibly do. So what we can do is, in fact, reuse certain functions we define inside of our classes, which makes it extremely usable and makes it a lot more fun, in my opinion. So yeah, pretty much, let me first explain what a class is. A class is a container or a box, essentially, that can store objects. For example, we have a box which has objects inside of it, and our box will be called car, for example. That's our class. Our class will be called car, and we have multiple objects, and those objects will be the cars themselves. For example, a Volvo, Audi, or Toyota. So, hopefully all of this made sense. It was a really quick explanation of everything. So, yeah. I'm just trying to look at all the notes that I have right here. Okay, there we go. So, how do you actually create a class? So, pretty much the keyword that's used to create a class is the class keyword, obviously. And as you may have noticed, in the base code that we use in pretty much all of our videos, we already have a class. The class that we use is called myClass. So yeah, that's pretty much that. So what we can do is we can actually create an object of our class. So let's first do this thing. It will make sense later on, trust me. So we can define a variable that will be specific for our class, and it will be an x variable, full number variable, with the value of 5. And that's it. That's how you define a class specific variable. And what we can do is we can actually create now an object that will print out that value for us. So you cannot actually do, you most likely thought that you could do I could now do system.out dot print line and x. You cannot do that. That's not how it works. You just cannot do that. In order to do that, or at least something similar to that, you have to call the class, my class, to do my class, and we're going to give it like a name for an object. So that's how you define an object. You type in the name of the class, which is my class, and now you give it a name. The name will be my object. And we now have to use the keyword new because it's a instance of an object from our class. It's a new instance, so that's why we use new. And then we do new class, and there we go. So that's how you pretty much declare a instance of a class. And now to print out the value 5 from our class, what do? You type in my object dot x, and that's it pretty much. So now if we compile this and run it, we should see, as you can see, it prints out the number 5 just like that. Now remember how I said it's the last thing you're gonna do is to repeat yourself. Let's say we have a class with a ton of variables, or let's say we have like 20 lines of code inside of here. So instead of this one line here, we would have like 20 lines of code. So this pretty much, these 2 lines substitute those 20 lines of code in our main function. But let's say you want to call it multiple times, you want to make another object of it, you want to, reuse it. What's stopping you from creating another object and using it again? I'm going to copy this. We're going to give it a 1 here. And I'm going to put it here and give it a 1 as well. Watch what happens if I compile this and run it. It will print out the number 2 times, and we only use 2 lines of code here instead of using up what, 40. So instead of using, instead of using up like here 20 lines of code, so this would equal to like 40 lines of code, but we have only 4 in here. But that's only if we had like 20 lines of code instead of this 1 right here. So since we only have 1 line here, it pretty much doesn't make sense to do it, but it will make sense in larger scale applications. However, there's another thing you can do. We can in fact increase the value of the second one without affecting the main value. Let me show you what I mean. Right before we print it out, I'm going to do something, and you will most likely guess that it will change the value of the first one as well. This is where another advantage of using object-oriented programming comes into play. You can pretty much modify any object inside of a class as you please without affecting any other object in any other class. Whoops, wrong syntax, there we go. So what I did here is I just now, made it so that the second instance will say 10 instead of 5, because we increased the value by 5. We pretty much increased the value of the I cannot speak today. We changed the x value of our class to 10 just by increasing it, We took the number 5 from this instance, increased it by 5, and loaded it into this variable before printing it out down here, as you can see. So if I compile this and run it, we should see 5 and 10, as you can see, we do. So let me just copy this multiple times, and so you guys can edit it to your pleasure. So I'm going to keep this one as it is. I'm going to get rid of this and comment it out. So I stay true to my format. There we go. And I'll have to copy and paste it 3 times. Sick. And we can comment it out, so you guys can like see what like is different with the code as I go along. So that's pretty much classes covered. I'm not gonna cover using multiple classes because it's been causing me a lot of problems and I don't wanna deal with it at all. So what are class attributes? What we can do is, what an attribute is it's essentially what I covered now. It's the X value right here. It's pretty much an attribute. However, we can define multiple attributes in our classes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this. Trust me, it will make sense in the long run. I'm actually going to separate these as I would normally separate them, so you guys know what's going on. So I'm going to actually have to, you know, let me have a look. Yeah, that's that example. That's how you modify. Yeah, I explained even modifying stuff. Yeah, use of multiple objects, already covered that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do something a bit different here. I'm going to keep the name as my class right here. I'm going to do something different with this example. So it's 3, so I'm going to comment these out. So in this example, the next one, I'm going to show how you can use actually multiple attributes inside of a class, which is also an important thing. And then also going to cover like some important keywords and such, but that will, you know, come in like later. Let me see at my notes. Yeah, these are like modifiers. Yeah, these are like up next, I think. No. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just looking up things as I go along. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's what we can do. We can in fact use multiple attributes inside of a class. So I'm going to do is I'm going to change this X variable to age, for example, and say he's 25, for example, and let's say string and like first name, and let's do, since it's a string, we need to use these double quotes. And we can do Daniel, and we can create another string called last name. So Daniel, actually, you know what, instead of Daniel, let's do these, and here nuts. There we go. And his age will be 25. It would make more sense if I changed the name here, but if I did that, you guys would have problems with it. Yeah. There we go. And since we already have, let's change this to person, you know, to make it bit more like legible and make more sense out of it. And what we can do is we can do system dot out print line, and we can do name space it out, and we can chain certain strings together. So let's do, since a person, we need to do person dot, and we had first name. So that's that. And then we do space it out. And then we do person dot last name. And pretty much what we did is we're printing out the full name by using objects like the first name and last name, which are defined up here. And now we need to print out the age of the person. So again, we're going to do system dot out dot print line, and we're going to say double quotes, and we're going to do age, and we're going to do person dot age. So that should be it. So basically we're just printing out all the things we've defined here for printing out, and it has multiple attributes now. We're using out 3 attributes instead of 1 all the time. So if I save it and compile it and run it, we should see name these nuts, age 25. Works like intended. Bear in mind, nothing's used here. It's all defined up here. Also, you have to define the class before. You cannot define it after. It's going to throw an error. So that's all neat and such, but you know, we can also define attributes. So just trying to figure out how we would, like, you know, define attributes. Okay, I'm looking at my notes right now to make it a bit simpler again, to make sure you guys understand everything. Okay, this is a pretty nice example. So I'm going to actually comment all of this out right here again. I'm going to comment this out, and this out. I'm going to save it. And what we're going to do is we're going to define, I'm going to use an example from like a car. For example, one of my favorite cars is a Mustang, for example. And what we can do is we can define parameters in a class. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to define a integer called model year. And we're going to leave it as it is. And we're going to define a string. It will be called, you know, model name, obviously. And now we do, what do we want to do? We want to create, you know, a class with parameters in it, so we can, you know, use the parameters to our advantage. So we do public, and then we say the name of the class, which is my class, and we give it the parameters, and also get the brackets in, and the parameters will go into these like regular brackets right here. And pretty much what you want to do is you want to, let's do int year, because, you know, year, and then we do string, and we do name, you know. And now what we do is this syntax might look really similar to if you were going to do it in, you know, in C#. It's pretty much the exact same thing, but it's going to work normally, you know, like it should. So now what we do is we want to make so that the model year equals the year parameter. Whoops. There we go. And we want to do that the model name equals the name parameter. So pretty much what we said here is, hey, I want you to load the model year from the year parameter inside of my parameter right here. And if you want to change the model name, you want to change the model name, you'll have to change the name right here into the parameter. So to use it now with this definition, it's actually fairly simple. I'm actually going to copy this and we're going to change it again for the sake of simplicity. Instead of person, we're going to say car because it's related to cars. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do system. Actually, let me copy it. I don't want to rewrite myself again and again. I know I already have made like a Vim tutorial and such, but like, you know, I like using this editor. It's simpler for me. So now that's not all actually. To use it, we actually have to use the parameters right here in these brackets, because if you remember, we have them defined like this. We first have to type in the year and then the name as a string. So the year, let's say I want to use a Mustang as an example, as I mentioned. So 1969, and then the name, and the name will be Mustang. So that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much what you do. And in order to print it all out, you do my class. Oops, no, stupid. Car dot. And then you do model name, for example. And then we want to space it out, so we do it like this. And then we do car dot model year. So what we should see is it should print out Mustang space 1969. And boom, that's what it did. Look, here we did not change anything. It's all inside of here, but the thing we changed is the parameters. We're now using parameters in our class, which is what we wanted to use, which are defined right here. These are the parameters that we are using inside of our class. So those are parameters. There are also like methods we can use inside of a class, and methods are useful if you wanna, you know, print out a certain piece of text. I already covered methods, so I'm not gonna cover those again, but these are again related to classes, and it makes them only like easier to do things with them. So for the sake of completion and so that nobody complains, I'm going to, in fact, what's going on? Oh yeah, my package is going to arrive. That's why my phone just rang. Anyway, so if I read this correctly, that is. Oh, okay, that's good. Okay. Sorry about that. So, here's the thing. I'm going to create a method in here, so I'm going to, you know, just comment this out, show you what a method is, because it's like important, I guess, to cover. There are also modifiers. I'm just gonna, you know, run through the modifiers. Actually, a website has like a pretty nice example of this. So I'm going to, like, you know, show you what the modifiers actually are and just talk you through them. I'm actually not gonna use them, but I'm gonna talk you through the code that's like as an example shown. I'm not gonna like you rewrite it again. I'm just gonna show you what it like is and what those modifiers are, so in the next video we can like cover everything else. So onto the methods then. So the methods, they are actually really simple. Let me just comment this out. You do not need this anymore. And we do not need this anymore as well. So let me just comment this out. Yeah, so we can create methods inside of our classes. So let me just create a method. To create a method, it's really simple to do. What you do is you type in static void, and we will call it, I don't know, my method. There we go. Do these regular brackets, then these squiggly brackets, and now we do what we want to like print out. For example, we want to do a system.out.println, and we want to say this text is from my method, for example, and 3 dots. Why not? So this is how we would actually like print out some text, you know. And in order to call our method, it's actually really easy. All you do is you it's also related to classes, so like, you know, inside of the main class, which is like inside of the main void inside of our my class thing, we just have to call the method thing. And since we're in the same, like, you know, class, we do not have to call a different class. All we have to do is just print out this method. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna compile this and just show you that it like does work, but I'm gonna get rid of it from this code because it's like related, but you know, it print out the text. That's cool. So I'm just gonna comment this out and uncomment back these 2 lines that we had before and do the same thing here. I'm just gonna comment this out, and I'm just gonna comment this out again. There we go. So we should have the example we had before where it should just print out Mustang 1969. As you can see, we have the same example as we had before. Again, this is just a side note so you guys know that you can actually use methods inside of classes themselves. I actually did cover methods, but you know, just for the sake of completion. So I mentioned that there are also like different modifiers. To do so and to explain, I'm going to bring up this lovely website I have prepared here. So what are modifiers? So basically, modifiers are pretty much keywords that let you access certain things. So for example, there are access modifiers. Access modifiers control the level of access. So pretty much what we have here, for example, for classes, we can use either public or default. And the difference between public and default is that public can basically be accessible by any other class, which is like one of the most used ones. I use it pretty much all the time to not have to worry about access privileges and such. It's really an important part. There's also the default one. The default one gets used if it's not defined. If you don't specify it, like for example, I did not specify it in the beginning here. So what we have here is we are using the default modifier. If I were to type in public, it's gonna scream at me because you know it's the base Java code and such. Anyway, pretty much here is an example of using a default modifier. A default modifier is pretty much the thing that you would use as the default one if you did not define anything else. There are also attributes, methods, and constructors. These are used for these are like the modifiers used for attributes, methods, and constructors. So you might have noticed that in our code, if I go back, I've been using here the public class modifier, the public modifier, to make it accessible. This is pretty much a public constructor. This is a constructor that we're using here. So this one is accessible from this class. So what else do we have here? So these are public, which means the code is accessible from all classes. And then this is the private one. So the private one is like used in almost all examples, but I like using the public one so I can use it from different like files and such. Sorry about that. And pretty much the difference is that the code is only accessible within the declared class, which means that if I were to type in, like instead of public, private, only in this class will I be able to use it. So yeah, it's really like a good example if you want to like separate certain like bits of data. There's the default one, obviously, you know, if you don't specify it, and then there's protected. The protected one makes it accessible in the same package and subclass, which pretty much covers like a bit of inheritance, but that's what we're going to cover in next week's video, so I'm not gonna bother you with that. There are also non-access modifiers. Pretty much what we're doing is, if we set it to final, all the things that are written in it, we cannot change ever. You know, we cannot change it like at all, which is like important if you, for example, want to demonstrate that you cannot change a certain thing if you use the final modifier. The final pretty much says this is the final value and I don't want you to change it. Then there's the abstract one. The abstract one, what it does, it basically says like, hey, I want you to access this, but I also want to like change it to my own. For those who have seen my C# tutorial video on like, what was it? Polymorphism, inheritance and such, you might have noticed I have used actually the abstract thing in there. That's pretty much the exact same thing. We pretty much define a function that we want to, you know, be able to access from any other class or any other like instance, but we want to change it. We wanna like change it in each and every class to do a specific thing for a different class. This is useful if you wanna make like a RPG game, for example. So here's an example of a final. So pretty much what the final does, it doesn't change its value if you've defined it. So here we have defined the x variable as 10, for example, and here it is defined, we have pi defined as 3.14. And what we're doing here is we're saying it's final. So pretty much what it will do is it will generate an error if we try and change it here in these two lines of code. Pretty much what they're trying to do in this example is they're trying to call the class myObject, which is fine, and they want to change the x parameter to 50, but they cannot do that since it's the final variable. The same thing goes for the number pi. Pi has been already defined as 3.14 and it's set to final, therefore they cannot change it. Static is used between, you know, it's like, what should I say? Static method pretty much it like can be accessed without creating an object, which is like really like important in some cases. So for example, here's an example of where they demonstrate the difference between static and public methods. So they have a public class and they have a static void and a public void. The static method pretty much has static methods can be called while creating objects. So what they have here is, since they want to use the static method, all they have to do is just call my static method and then call it like this. However, if they want to use the public one, they actually have to use the myClassObject thing in order to use it, because the difference is that they don't have to, you pretty much if you want to use a static void, you don't have to define a class. You don't have to create an object in order to access it, which is a really like important thing to know if you wanna like, you know, be able to change certain things around. However, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are definitely scenarios where you have to use either public or static, and it just like happens to be that you basically have to pay attention to what you're pretty much given. You cannot like willy-nilly use just static void and be done with it. There are cases where you might want to use certain functions from a certain file and you just have to define it as public. There's pretty much no other way. The abstract one is pretty much we have an abstract method called study, and yeah, this is pretty much a really good example, but you know, I'm going to cover abstraction and everything else in the next one. The abstract method is used if you want to create an abstract class, which is an abstraction, which we're going to cover next week, along with encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. And that's pretty much it. There's not much else to it. That's pretty much all of it. Again, the code will be on my GitHub page with everything in there. Everything that we've used is commented out, so you can try it out for yourself. I try to go and cover as much of the things as necessary. And yeah, it's a lot of fun for me to make these videos, even though I had some issues before with my webcam. I managed to fix it, so yeah, you can expect some streams again real time soon. Who knows? Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Who knows? So that's pretty much it. Everything has been hopefully explained properly. Everything hopefully made sense. Again, the code is down in the description on my GitHub profile, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next week's video, where we're going to cover, as I mentioned, the encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction. I hope it will make sense to all of you, so that I don't, like, you know, make some stupid things and end up, you know, end up making like rookie errors. So yeah, I'll see you guys then. Bye.